We got some chive action going on today. I'll show you guys the easiest way to start your chives and how you could take chives like this and turn it into an endless supply of chives that'll last you forever. For this, you're going to need some kind of vessel to grow your chives in. I like using these old water jugs here. Make a couple holes in the bottom for drainage. This works good because it has a built-in humidity dome. It's kind of like winter sowing, except you can do it any time of year you want to, but anything you want to use is fine. Then you're going to need your soil medium. Regular potting soil works fine. That's how I grew these, just regular potting soil. This is my soil blocking recipe I've been using, and it's like rocket fuel for plants. So check out my video on soil blocking if you want to see how I make this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and get my medium nice and moist. And we're going to go ahead and start loading her up. We're looking for about 4 inches of soil in here. We don't want it soggy. You squeeze it, a little bit of water comes out, that's it. This moisture is really important. If you guys are having problems getting seeds to germinate, it's probably because your medium is not moist enough. You could direct sow your chives. I never have great luck direct sowing my chives. This way works so much better. Then you got to get your chive seeds. They're relatively cheap. This package has 100 seeds in it. That's going to work perfect for what we're doing. Got the chive seeds open. Going to go ahead. We're just going to gently and evenly sprinkle these across the surface. If they're not perfectly even, you could brush them around. In the end, it's not really going to matter. I like to hit them with a blast from a mister. Get them nice and saturated. And then we finish them off by just gently scattering a little less than 1/4 inch of soil on top. Then what I did was I took some tape and I closed this down. The cap is on. We're going to leave it like this until these plants are about 1 inch high. That's going to keep this soil nice and moist so they don't dry out while they're germinating. Eventually, your chives are going to look like this. I was surprised at how long it takes chives to grow. These are probably about 2 months old to reach this point. Take care of them. You water them just like any other plant. Don't give them too much water. And it may seem like they're overcrowded inside here, but that's the good part. I'm going to show you guys how to plant these. If we get in here nice and close, each one of these sticking up is its own chive plant. I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut this, divide this up, and plant them out. Before we plant them, I'm going to take you around the garden. I'm going to show you a bunch of chives I did put inside the ground and what they're going to look like when they go in, how they're going to grow, and then what they're going to look like a couple months from now. Chives are supposed to be a great companion plant, so I'm trying to put them in my various garden beds, any space I can. I can't confirm they're a good companion plant, but I do know they taste great. So when you put your chives in the ground, you're putting one little tiny plant in. It's going to look like this after a couple weeks. Got some more chives over here. Same deal. They're starting to get nice and thick. They're loving actually being in the ground, but they all started out just like this. Got chives in the strawberry bed. Same thing. You can see here, these guys are really starting to multiply. You give these chives time in the ground, they will endlessly multiply for you. So you could take that 1 container of chives, plant them out, and as they get bigger, divide the bulbs up and keep separating them, and they'll just keep growing into bigger bulb plants. You have an endless supply of chives. These are some chives from last year that started out with the single bulb, and look at them now. These probably have 7 or 8 bulbs in each cluster. Look at this guy. This guy is loaded. Eventually these chives are going to get really cool purple flowers on them. But right now it is still the end of April, and chives are a good cold weather crop. They can tolerate the cold. These things were growing through the snow. We've had several frosts and they do not care. You can see right there, this one's starting to get ready to flower. Same thing with this one. Give it a couple weeks and we're going to have big flowers all over the place, and these things are going to keep multiplying. Chives will do really well in full sun or even in a lot of shade. This area here is pretty shady at the end of this bed, so these chives will do fine here. I'm going to go ahead, move my mulch over to the side here. exposing the cardboard. And we're going to make a chive bed here. I'm not sure what the internet says about spacing of chives, but I go at 6 inches because I'm going to be constantly digging these things up, dividing the bulbs when they expand, and expanding all the chives throughout this garden. So 6-inch spacing. I'm going to make some holes in here, kind of deep, 6 inches apart. And you can see here I still have some cardboard that is not broken down. If you decided to go no-till, covered 1/4 acre with cardboard, this is how you're going to plant. So I'm going to make my holes here, probably about 3 or 4 inches deep, and we'll go from there. Here's another tip too for you that went no-till and you still have cardboard that's not broken down. Leave the cardboard in place and score around it when you make your holes. This soil, having been covered with cardboard, spoiled hay, leaves, all through the winter, is looking really good underneath. I got sandy, hard, clay compacted soil, so I'm really happy to see this. And you can even see here, I threw some of the oyster mushroom bale that you've seen in other videos, took some of that, put it underneath here, and the mycelium is starting to spread throughout here. So maybe we'll get some oyster mushrooms here as well. Before we get started, I'm going to give these chives one last drink to get this soil nice and saturated. My chive's nice and saturated. Instead of cutting this, I'm going to see if I can just pop this whole thing out. So I'm going to gently grab the chives and just squeeze it a little bit. And there we go. Big ol' clump of chives. Planting into a newly established no-till permaculture garden, this kind of planting, potting soil, is going to be your friend. We're going to mix this with the native soil when we plant the chives. So let's dive into our chives here, and we're going to just gently coax out a couple of these chives. If you get more than one, that is perfectly fine. This one looks like I have 2 chive plants. I'm going to start out just with a gentle coating of potting soil in my holes. And I'm going to grab my chive plant, make sure the roots are in the ground, kind of spread out. Hit it with a little native soil to hold it in place. Then I'm going to come back and fill around it with a little bit of this potting soil, and then a little bit of the native soil mixed in. I'm kind of going to compress it down just a little bit, not too much. Only plant them as deep as they were inside the container. Right now, this does not look too impressive. It looks like a couple blades of grass sitting here, bent over, folded to the side. Little cluster of chives here. This is a bigger cluster, which is perfectly fine. This probably has 7 or 8 plants inside it. Really nice root system going on here. Just taking my clump of chives, putting it in the ground, putting a little native soil around it, and then coming back, backfill with some potting soil, and keep mixing in the native soil. You'd be really surprised at how well chives transplant. Doesn't seem like a plant that would do too well transplanting, but I've dug up a bunch of these and split them up, and I have not lost any chives yet. Because this is so much work, I would suggest breaking off a decent clump of chives to plant instead of just doing one single plant like I did here. If you wanted to take the time, you could take all those chives out of there, probably over 100 chive plants, plant each one in a single hole. They will grow, they will get more bulbs, you can dig them up and divide them, and you'll have more chives than you know what to do with. I like to finish off my beds here by putting a piece of timber across and then just skimming the entire length of soil with some potting soil. I think it makes it look nice, and these chives are going to be here forever, so I need to know where they're at so I don't plant anything else around them. Hit them with a little water to help the transplanting, And when these chives start growing up, forming clumps and getting tall, I'll take this mulch, put it back around the chives. And I may even come through here and add wood chips. Chives have no problem growing through wood chips. They'll even surprise you. I put all these wood chips down here and on the opposite side of the fence where I got the gooseberries and all my fruit trees, and the chives came right through. No problem. Throwing some chives between the columnar apple trees right here in the wood chips. We'll see if that helps with any pest control. Probably add some to the asparagus patch as well. I still have another full container to break down of chives.